Welcome to Knack from Business podcast. Today's topic is the Medici Network Strategy Every Leader Should Copy. Your hosts are Bernie Franzgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You, with special guest Percy Barr. Question of the audience: how do you build the kind of network that actually creates opportunity quietly, consistently, and without having to shout for attention? That's the real problem this episode solves. Cosimo's playbook shows how power grows when you invest in people, build trust over time, and strengthen the community around you. And that's exactly why Canada Growth Network, CGN, and East Trade Winds, ETW, will be speaking about how modern founders, entrepreneurs, and career shifters can use today's systems, tech, and collaborative communities to build influence the same way Cosimo did, through relationships, credibility, and long-term game strategy. Let me introduce you to Cosimo de Medici. He is the quiet force who reshaped Florence, actually larger parts of Europe, including France, the papacy, from the shadows. A banker who never wore a crown yet moved a city more than any ruler could. Born in 1389, he built Europe's first financial network, the greatest minds of the Renaissance, and mastered the art of influence without ever raising his voice. His legacy wasn't built on power, but on people, vision, and a long game that outlived him by centuries. He has a favorite quote or saying:
"Envy is a weed that should not be watered. Don't brag, don't flex, don't provoke jealousy. Stay powerful, stay quiet. Let influence grow without noise."
So here comes the first question then. Since Cosimo is not here to ask the questions because he's long since departed from this part of the universe, how did he master influence without power?
Well, Cosmo understood that true power is the people around you that you've developed into a network. And he did that by building partnerships or loose and networking event kind of things that actually drew the community, much like other networking groups like CGN or East Trade Winds. And they worked on growing through service. So, I'll help you, and then later on you can help me. He didn't do this randomly. He had a structure that he had started to set up. So we see this beginning of actually like an SOP that he worked on, standard operating procedure, that he used through letters of credit. He used it through a clear process of making arrangements with people. It really is a modern, for him, it was a Renaissance version of a CRM. And, most founders do that through systems like Go High Level or any other CRM of today.
I just think of what kind of software you'd have to develop where you actually had your Pope speaking for you. But maybe that's a feature I haven't got to. But having said that, the neat thing is this man was one of the first to realize that you had to plant a strategy before you made a buck. He actually built Florence before he prospered in Florence. Money was spent, ships were built, empires were started, so that people knew how to thrive and prosper. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't transactional. It was transitional. He changed how Europe worked. Pretty powerful stuff.
It really speaks to the point that he actually had a plan. For example, he didn't just build a ship because he wanted to be in shipping. He built a ship because he had a specific route that needed to be worked on and specific products needed to be back. So he planned more than the average business person of that time.
Well, it's identifying a problem, right? Once you see the problem and you address the problem, and one of the keys was that it wasn't with great fanfare. Right. It's almost like when you donate to somebody, it's not meant to be a fanfare moment. Just take care of business, do it, and you build your community, because it's the people will follow that portion, will become part of that tribe, because it works. Right. You go where things work, and that's really super key.
And when you notice with Cosmo's attention to detail, you'll notice that he was not the front person on a lot of these projects. He was the quiet person in the background funding the project, and so that it would go forward, but he'd let other people take the credit for it.
The thing that's kind of neat is he was one of the first people who said, "I've got enough money. I'm not really worried about that. How do I build something for my grandchildren?" It wasn't even his children. It was his grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. He was creating a multi-generational empire out of nowhere. It didn't exist before him.
Well, it's not only just his own grandkids. It's like the old adage, the rising tide lifts all boats. So he had that ecosystem that was part of it. And that's what we're trying to do with East Trade Winds and the Canada Growth Network is, everybody wins. It's not a matter of I'm bigger or better than you. We all win. We might be at different paces, but again, it goes from that perspective.
Well, that speaks to that whole community thing, Bernie. If you have a problem and you're by yourself, then you got to go figure out who's actually going to solve it, and then who can you trust to solve it. But when you're involved with a network like East Trade Winds or Canada Growth Network, you have people who are already there, who's somewhat vetted. You've been able to see them, be able to hear talk to them, and then your problem comes up, and you have somebody that you have a level of trust that they'll actually come forward and actually solve your issue. That's the whole thing about the networking thing, is you can be a lot farther ahead than the guy beside you who doesn't have.
I found interesting is Florence was a second-tier city. It really wasn't a power center when he got started. There were other communities that were bigger and more powerful, and he just made Florence the one over a lot of years, banking, money, investing in artisans, buildings, people, banks. Florence didn't really, it was not a village, but very much a second-tier city before him.
It almost speaks to the Renaissance, right? Because the Renaissance is the impression I'm left with. It's the new growth, and so if you water the garden, your flowers or your plants will bloom, all right, it will grow if it's crops. And so he's watering the garden, and that's kind of a community at large.
We've got a couple things out of this event. First of all, we need to create a network of people around us. Okay. Second of all, we need to grow where we're planted. So don't get the idea that you can move off to a bigger city and then do well. You can do well where you are. Now, most of us have the advantage now that we can be online, so the world is our oyster, for lack of a better term. So I'd bring that in to say we've got two main ideas here: build the network, grow where you're planted.
I agree. And how would Cosmo view a Go High Level or the Zoom space? How would he, if that got dropped into his lap back in the day and he wasn't convicted of heresy and witchcraft, etc., how do you think that would float?
Well, he probably would be a master at this particular thing, because he was already a master at creating subtle conversations, which created, with the people he talked to, this level of trust that you could work with, right? Now, when you couple that with things like Go High Level, which is actually a systemized way of actually making those contacts sustainable, I think he would have done a great thing. And when you also add in his banking system ideas of money lending and money investing, I think he'd be an Elon Musk type person. Steve Jobs would have nothing on this guy. Bill Gates would be a minor player in his world. He would be one of those people, but unlike Elon Musk, he wouldn't be in the forefront. Right?
Very much so.
They probably talk about his family, but not the particular person, right? So whether you're talking in Canada, people like the Bronfmans or whatever, you know them as a family, but you don't know the individual people who are actually running the business now.
You also get a sense that the people he met quietly in a darkened back room, not only knew their name and their business, but he knew what they wanted and then said, how do I help you get it? There was a real enabling process that said, I can get you there. Do you want to come along? Which, by the way, was quite new at the time, where everyone was actually just lopping off princes.
Well, he also believed in people, right? So if you brought an idea to him, he wasn't going to invest in something that he didn't feel that you had worked out. Because, although some of his tactics for collections weren't as popular as they would be today, he probably didn't want to actually do that, right? He'd prefer if you were successful, paid him back, and then moved on with the next deal.
Yes, that both kind of talks to the dynasty through community, right? And not just the dynasty of his name, but the dynasty of, growing something bigger that it lasts longer. So he invested in Florence. And so it's not all about business. It's also about supporting that community too, whether it's a food bank, whether it's education, the fine arts in general, the soccer team. Do you see that? That, I think, is something you would find that would ebb and flow, that would provide sharing the wealth. Again, raising the rising tide, raising the community.
You can see that because, okay, let's say he invests with Joe the baker down the road, right? Well, if he invests in Florence, in some of the artisans that were coming to Florence and making Florence a kind of a social center, that bread maker's got a better chance of actually repaying the loan because he has more people in the area. It's not just dependent on the local community; he's now dependent on somewhat of a tourist section. And he also promoted the things of Florence that were specific to Florence and made them unique in the whole environment.
You also get a sense that he saw Florence that he wanted before it was ever built. There was no question that he had a picture in his mind of what the end product looked like. He actually sort of designed the blueprints in his head before he even built the infrastructure. Very cool.
Yeah. He wanted to create, ongoing dynasty. That's usually not a business guy today is not is worried about a dynasty, I don't think. He is concerned about his legacy with his own family and stuff. And so, that some of this stuff, how he was involved in the local community would build some of that.
I would also say that it is, like you said earlier, if the baker is doing well, right? All these players are coming in. Right now, we're reliant on marketing budgets. We're reliant on, doing pushes out, either through social media, paper campaigns, mailers, flyers, whatever the technique, or cold phone calls, right? Versus, someone would be saying, I know a guy, or, who would you pick if you were looking for something, who's the best baker? Are you looking for bread, or are you looking for desserts? Go see this one or go see that one, because it could have been different directions.
Well, that's an interesting point, Bernie, because we know that people who are referred close business faster and close bigger business. So these referrals would have been important to that local community in Florence. So Cosmos would have made referrals based on not only quality, because they don't want his name to be smeared, but it also would have made it so that he would have been promoting people he had in his network.
I think our networking groups that we're offering is kind of like a modern day version of the Florence without the stone walls.
Yeah.
The other thing that you clearly see is this is a man who knew how to develop and build lieutenants. You only have 168 hours in a week. That has not changed. And if you're trying to do it all your own, you will not get there. And so this man had his dozen people that he worked with that could actually scale his ideas. It's amazing what an old idea this actually is now that we put new clothing on it.
So from a modern view, a modern entrepreneur, what mistakes do we make compared to Cosimo?
I think that back to Covey, we don't begin with the end in mind. We try to make a sale, and then we make another sale, and then we make another sale. But it doesn't change anyone's life hardly at all. Might buy your visa. That's about it. But creating a community is powerful.
Yeah. I think one of the things, from leaving corporate to coming into doing solopreneur, much the same way right now, are you hungry? Well, your body's going to tell you. I can't tell if Wayne or Percy is hungry right now. Well, I might be able to indicate it if, I saw them salivating looking at a steak. That might be giving me a clue, but I can't really tell what they have an appetite for. And so sometimes when you go as a solopreneur, you think you're going to do everything by yourself. And kind of speaking what you were just talking about, Wayne, you're isolated, and you can't be all things at all times.
Yeah, you can't develop the leverage you can with a group. But he also, I've worked with a lot of small mom and pop organizations over the years before I got into corporate. And one of the challenges is that every sale seemed to have its own conditions. It had its own track through from ordering to getting payment to working out how the support would work. And I think the difference between that and what Cosmos was working here is he actually built up an infrastructure. He built up a way to talk to people. He built up a trust system between groups. Every loan seemed to be handled the same way. It was paperworked. There was a large dependency on paper and structure, which a lot of businesses don't have today. And we kind of, especially now that we've moved into this solopreneur area, a lot of this stuff is done off the cuff. We feel like it's the right thing to do based on the person in front of us, as opposed to, no, we actually have a system for doing this return. And I'm not sending you Canadian dollars for US purchase. I'm sending you back the US price. And we have a system to actually do that, a way to reverse it. It'll make everything work better if you do it the same way and do it consistently, because even if it's wrong, at least it's consistently wrong, and then you can correct it at tax time. So, I think a lot of that had to do with developing of a structure, and that can really help out a small business person.
Our takeaway is that Cosimo built Florence. We're building modern communities where founders thrive. So that's for us. That's kind of the takeaway.
Well, we're also doing the same thing with Canada Growth Network. We're building something that is different than the standard networking. When you go to a networking event, you usually have a couple people chatting at the front, talking about their sales, what they sell, and what they do. And then you have a networking group after that. CGN's a lot different. We actually talk about what everyone does for a small amount of time. And then we talk about a specific problem that most businesses are having, whether that's follow-up or whether that's creating content or whether that's working through a process. So it's more of a learning experience as opposed to I'm here to pitch you stuff. And we found that to be quite beneficial. We've had a lot of people who really like that. East Trade Winds is more like a traditional networking group where you get to learn about what other people do and how that works. But there's also a fair amount of networking done with that. And that's what we like about this whole arrangement between the two groups.
One thing that I see as a takeaway is if you're developing a feudal system, you are as strong or as weak as your relationship with the prince. This family created an environment that was adjacent but not the same, where they built a banking empire that didn't actually involve the lineage of your parents or of what kingdom you ran. You could create your kingdom through cautious planning and growth. Very, very different in that 14th century.
So again, it breaks up to those things we mentioned earlier. He built a network of people, and he grew where he was planted, and he created a legacy. Some of the other things he did is he was influential in the politics of that area. And it's where we start to see the movement away from, hey, I own 100 acres, therefore I'm rich, to the business world, which is in the city, where people didn't own as much land, but they were dependent on the farms around them for their agricultural support. Imagine the amount of invention that he did towards how things are done in the financial system. I mean, he pioneered the whole letters of credit idea, debits and credits. That was who started working with this. The idea of creating businesses outside his local environment, where he started to put these small banks all over Europe, developing the groundwork for international finance that we run with today.
Do you think we would be encouraged to be inspired by this and have marble statuettes of Percy and Bernie?
No, I don't think that that's probably a good idea, Wayne. I think that would be a frivolous idea, unless there was somebody else did it. They can do it on their dime, not mine. Thank you very much. But I think there's lots of things that we can look at with this person's life, and we can pick out the better things that happened because of them and move forward. Now, you got to understand is some people will not be enthused about his business principles, but they have to realize that was a different time and place, and it's really not fair to anyone to take today's standards and put them against someone of the 18th century, because we all have we moved on from different things. What was common there then is not common now. So I think he's someone who should be looked into, be modeled for his big points, maybe not modeled for his specific down to the nitty gritty ways he did business. But there's a lot here, and I'm sure they'll say the same things about the titans of business today, 300 years from now.
I agree. In fact, the fact that he created a business that didn't require you either to have a hard asset such as land, 100 acres, 100 cows, 100 horses, or 100 knights. You could have a business and still flourish. And in fact, being able to support the arts is kind of another kind of a really interesting piece that benefits us now today. There are other ripples that have come out of it. I like to say thank you to Cosimo de Medici, although he's not here. If he were here, it'd be great. But yeah, I don't think it's going to work out at this point in time for us. It's not what we plan on seeing. It goes to the machine, so to speak. To co-hosts Percy, Barr, and Wayne Pratt, plus you, the Knack for Business listeners. So Cosimo understood the single connection could change a life, just as supporting a young architect or a young artisan, Leonardo da Vinci, for example. We would not have seen all kinds of different works and all kinds of different genius coming out because he funded it and sparked the Renaissance. And if building meaningful relationships, long-term opportunity sounds like a next step in your journey, connect with us at CanadaGrowthNetwork.com or at the East Tradewinds, and step up and into a community designed to help elevate you. Reach out to us at info@creativeinsight.com.
Best way to reach me is motivateyou.ca, MOTIVE, the numeral 8, the letter U.ca, and my email is wayne@motivateyou.
I'm Percy Barr, and you can reach me at percybarr.com or percy@percybarr.com. Love to hear from you.